our pantry mini makeover is finally complete, and I cannot wait to show you how we took it from uninspired and disorganized to a beautifully functional English cottage inspired space. Let's take it back just 3 weeks ago to how disordered and chaotic our pantry closet was looking. I went through this whole space and cleared out any expired or stale items and did a good amount of cleaning. And overall, I brought a little more order to the pantry, which I have done over and over. However, the layout and function of the space just wasn't working, and honestly, I just wanted it to be a lovely extension of our kitchen that I was inspired to keep tidy. Maybe you can relate, but when an area of our home gets a little refresh, it really does inspire me to maintain the organization and upkeep of that space. And it just brings me a lot of joy as I go about my homemaking. So after every time that I would get this closet back in order, it still left me feeling like the space wasn't being utilized as best it could, primarily in the lower third with the wire drawers that we were using. The broom and mop on the wall were another issue in here, and I wanted to find a way to get them out of the main pantry space. The first step in making over this pantry was to clear everything out, and then I hung this beautiful peel and stick wallpaper. Unfortunately, I somehow lost a lot of the footage that I had of me installing it, but basically you cut the pieces to size and then you peel off the paper backing and you stick it to the wall a little bit at a time, and you smooth out the air bubbles as you go. I'm a huge fan of wallpaper, and I think especially in a small space like a closet or a half bathroom, it can really make such an impact. It's less expensive because it's a small space, and it goes relatively quick. This one came from Amazon, and the listing photo definitely made it appear as if the background was a creamy white, when in person it does have a bit of a tannish background that on camera looks kind of pink, but it's really not. It just changes a lot depending on the lighting. Then my husband Dan took my idea of installing a better type of drawer system and decided to custom build the entire bottom portion of the pantry to include 3 deeper and wider drawers on heavy-duty tracks that were complete with a butcher block counter. He's not a carpenter, he's not a cabinet maker or a videographer, but he looked up some plans and created these custom fit drawers that can pull out the full length of the pantry and really maximize the depth. So after the basic structure of the drawers were installed, then we moved on to placing the hardware, the pulls. You can see my husband definitely is more of an engineer type mind. I would just eyeball it, but he likes to measure it all out and find the center, and then he sanded everything down so that it would be nice and smooth as well. So we found these pulls on Amazon as well, and I love the antique brass color of them and the fact that they almost match our existing vintage hardware almost perfectly. The color is slightly different, but for a modern pull, they are a very close match. And then we decided to trim out each of the fronts of the drawers as well with this little thin trim. We've used this before in our home, so it does tie in elsewhere, like on our mantle, but my husband cut those all to size, and then we just used this Loctite glue because it's so thin, nailing it in would possibly splinter them, and they're so lightweight that they're very easy to glue. And he made his own template as well to screw in the handles. And then for the door of the pantry, it just was a simple slab door, nothing special. We thought about changing the door completely, but ultimately we decided just to work with what we had. He measured out all of the widths and, you know, all the spacing for it. So that got some fresh trim and some fresh paint. But after all the drawers were done, I went ahead and painted them with the color A New Gray by Sherwin-Williams, which is the color of our walls here in the kitchen and the living room and the dining room. It is a favorite color of mine. I think it is such a great neutral. It says it's a gray, but it definitely pulls more of a warm tan, and I just think it's a great color. Obviously, I've used it in the majority of our home. And then along all of the trim on the door, I did use some caulking to fill in any gaps, and then you just smooth it down with your finger. It's very simple, but it definitely gives it a more professional and finished look, especially when you go to paint it, which I did use the color Simply White by Benjamin Moore, but it is color matched to Bare. And I did get a paint that was scuff resistant or scuff defense, something like that. I thought that would be appropriate for a door that is going to be getting a lot of use. So after that was painted, my husband reinstalled it. One of the last things that he did was custom cut this little finishing piece for the base of the drawer cabinet, just to kind of hide the platform, give it a little bit of a decorative element, and then I went ahead and painted that with the same color to match the drawers. To finish off the butcher block, which we debated, we kind of liked the natural color, but to match the butcher block that we have in the rest of the kitchen, I did use this Minwax dark walnut color, and I'm really so glad I did. We definitely agreed that going dark was the better choice. I just think it looks so rich and beautiful against the wallpaper and the paint color, and again, of course, it ties in with the kitchen. And then I grabbed 2 packs of these command hooks that are a double hook to put on the back of the door to hang our broom and mop. Because that was definitely another issue in the pantry, that the broom and mop just took up a lot of space and it was just too close to the food, and I never liked that. So you can see my girl style of hanging things and leveling things. I used a pencil and my eyes, but I think it worked out just fine. They look perfectly leveled to me. Since this pantry is pretty tiny, we don't rely on it 100% to store all of the dry goods that we keep in our home. We actually store things in a couple different places in the kitchen and a little bit in our basement, which I'll share more on in a little bit. But one of the places we keep dry pantry goods is in this upper cabinet. But as you can see, it was also quite messy and things were hard to find. So I went ahead and purchased a set of 6 of these wide mouth glass jars with lids so that I could decant all of our frequently used and repurchased things like nuts, seeds, protein powder, things like that. And lastly, to finish off the butcher block, I used this warm satin polyurethane and a little chip brush to brush that on and finish it off. All right, so here's the final reveal of the Pantry Makeover. You can see the door updated on the outside is looking so much better. I actually went ahead and painted all of this wall so that everything got a fresh coat of white paint, and the trim just really elevated that simple basic slab door. And now this inner section is just so beautiful. I am so thrilled with how it turned out. Like I showed, the first 2 shelves really didn't change at all. They kind of stayed the same aside from just painting them the same color as our walls and as the drawers that Dan built. He just blew me away with this project, to be honest. He took my idea and ran with it and just created such a perfect custom fit piece. So not only do we have all of this wonderful storage that really takes advantage of the full depth of this pantry, which I've mentioned before, it's about 4 feet deep. So we do have a decent amount of space in here. Even though it is narrow width-wise, it does go back a good amount. We did throw around a few different ideas of creating sort of like an L shape of shelving, or some people suggested a U shape, but I don't think people really realize how narrow this opening is. And if we had shelves along the wall, they would kind of stick out, you know, farther than the opening of the closet, and that would just be kind of awkward. And really all we could fit would be canned items or something like that. So the drawers really take advantage of the depth. They're not perfectly organized, but I'll give you a peek inside. You can see how they pull out the full length of this pantry, but we just have kind of like kids snacks and lunch packing things, and then extra tea in the back. And then the middle is just sort of a various compilation of things. Some cooking ingredients, some cereal, peanuts, you know, just kind of a mishmash of different things. And then the bottom is more of our baking drawer. So we keep flours in here so it fits a 5-pound bag of flour perfectly, like a large container here of peanut butter powder, and then, you know, brown sugar, powdered sugar, and then some taller boxes like that one I put in there because it kind of fit better. But they just glide so beautifully, and he added this lovely wood trim piece at the bottom just for a little decorative moment, and I love it. I couldn't love it more. And then the butcher block came out so well. It just ties in beautifully with our main kitchen space. And again, just creates sort of a counter, a landing zone for us. I'm sure it's going to get piled with things, you know, on grocery day. I'm sure we're going to wind up just piling things in there, or it can just hold overflow. And then as things get cleared out of the drawers, we can slowly move things back in. So I just have a lovely little basket there that could hold fruit or snacks or chips or something, but for now it's just empty. And then underneath the microwave, which again, that was always there for as long as we've had this pantry. When we bought our house, we asked our electrician to put in an outlet in this pantry specifically so we could put a microwave in here, and that has worked out really well for 6 years that we've been here. So that we tried to put on the counter just to kind of see how that would look. But I really hated the idea of kind of wasting that counter because you couldn't put anything in front of a microwave and then you couldn't open the door. So for us, it really works up there. We don't use it a ton, so that is kind of the perfect space for us. But we did want to take advantage of this little area above the counter, so I asked Dan to install just this little baby shelf. Again, just to hold a couple overflow things. Right now we have some apples on it and this beautiful little tin. Right now there's nothing in it, but we could definitely put, you know, granola bars or something in there and really take advantage of that shelf. And he custom cut those corbels as well, and then we painted it to match. So we're just kind of really trying to utilize all of the space that we had in here as best we could without making it feel cramped. And then at the very top, again, that shelf didn't change. That's the same shelf that we had just for overflow. Right now we have some jars up there and a pitcher and then a basket. Actually, there's a couple bags of chips up there, so I thought that was a good use of that space to again hold overflow food items that maybe we don't need right away. We can kind of store them there, and then as we need them, we can pull them down. And as they get eaten and the bag gets smaller, then we can kind of transfer them to the drawers. And then on the inside, we did also add trim and those hooks so that I could hang our mop and broom. I did wind up getting new of both of those actually, because they both needed to be replaced. And now was a good time to do that. And they fit really well with those two hooks. I didn't want to put both on the same hook. I thought that that might be a little bit too much weight, although they say, I think they can hold 4 pounds, but they are holding up really well, and that helped to get them out of the main pantry space. So for those who may not be familiar with our kitchen, kind of to orient you where the pantry is, this is our kitchen overall. So the pantry is tucked off in the back left corner. As far as other dry goods storage, we do have these canisters on our counter. So we keep oats, rice, sugar, and flour here. So I don't have to store that in my pantry. Obviously the overflow that I use to refill them, I do keep in the pantry, but that's really the place where we store the bulk of those food items. And then above our stove, I did share this early on in January. This is also where we store all of our spices, salts, some seasonings and condiments and things like that. So again, that gives us some food storage that we don't have to hold in the pantry. And then moving right over above kind of our coffee and bread station, we have this closet, and I showed you, this cabinet I should say, how I updated some of the food storage in here. So again, coffee and tea we keep in here, and then our mugs and drinking glasses at the top, kind of extra drinking glasses. But then all of these food items, again, we don't have to keep in the pantry. We have this little bit of extra storage here. So we just keep kind of like nuts and honey, maple syrup. We make our own peanut butter, so we keep that in here. Coconut, things like that. This used to be our dish cabinet. So we used to have our dishes and bowls and cups in here, but we wound up moving those over into our island, which again, this we did years ago because we wanted the kids to be able to access it, to set the table, to unload the dishwasher, things like that. We moved them in here. These are just some leftover paper plates from Valentine's Day. That's also where we keep our dish cloths and the cleaning cloths for the mop. I fold right there. These really should be like that so they can hold these up, but that's where we keep the mop replacement heads for the mop that hangs in the pantry. Oh, and the light came off. Let me see if I can get closer without turning it on. Kind of give you a look of how it looks, how the color looks with the light off. I know it's a little dark, so it's hard to see, but you can see how close I am and the light isn't on. You really have to be kind of in front of it for the light to turn on. Or if the door is shut, obviously when you open the door, then the motion light comes on as well. As far as additional food storage, we do have here in our basement our deep freezers, and then also this shelf that is even more overflow pantry for things we want to stock up on, or just, again, the larger items like oats or something that we want to refill. We have rice, we have some canned items, pasta, broth, tomato products, and then I did pull out things like the tins that I use to bring meals, or a couple serving platters that we really don't use weekly or even monthly. They maybe are only used a couple times a year. So those I can easily store down here. I also have a couple of seasonal things like a cookie press and an iced coffee maker and a little mini crock pot, things that I don't have to have up in the kitchen taking up space. We can really utilize this kind of bonus room that we have down in our basement for storing all kinds of things, but also just additional food. It's funny to think about how quickly I thought we could do this little makeover. I thought maybe it would just take a weekend or so, and it turned into a whole 3-week mini renovation, but it was all worth it. Despite the challenges that we inevitably face along the way, it's always so fun to tackle these projects with my husband, and now we just seem to leave the pantry door wide open more often than not so that we can enjoy the beauty within. So thank you so much for being here today. If you'd like to see more organization in our home, I could link a video for you here. And be sure to subscribe. I make a new video every week about living a beautiful life at home. Take care.